Hi and welcome to another crochet infusion. So for today's tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to do a tapestry crochet. So this is just a quick little demonstration about tapestry and a little bit of information in case you don't already know with tapestry crochet. So to begin with, this is a beanie hat that I've been working on and I'm going to show you very quickly of what's been happening with this beanie hat. So to begin with the beanie hat, I've been working in a single crochet back loop only stitch, and then I've been joining this round just to here using the invisible slip stitch, simply because I like that stitch, and then I've worked onto continuous rounds later on. So when you do tapestry, you don't use a single crochet. You do use a single crochet, that's a lie. You use a single crochet, but it's a modified single crochet. And also when you work in tapestry, if you're working in a round, continuous joining is actually necessary, so you don't have no break going on with your work. So once you've finished and you've got your circumference in the round, that's where I then do a continuous join. So there's no continuous joint, there's no slip stitching, invisible slip stitch, there's none of that at all. We're just going straight into the next stitch, which is always a good idea to use a stitch marker for the end of your round or at the beginning of the round. I actually put my stitch marker at the start of the round, so I know when my round is going to begin, and I'll also know when my round ends. So my round end will stop literally one stitch before the marker. Here is the graph that I'm working from, and you might be able to see, I'll just zoom in a minute, so you might be able to see now a bit better. I've been marking where I'm going just at the side here. This is always a good idea. If you're going to print this off, you might want to use a ruler or something just to determine what round you're going to be working on. So to begin with, we're going to start here, which is round 1, and we're going to work this round and introduce the red. So as we're working, we get to the last stitch here, which is going to be the red, and then we're going to continue to straight into round 2. When you're working in rows with tapestry, it doesn't quite work like that, so it might actually be quite, different for you if you're so used to doing rows rather than rounds. So there is a difference when you're working in rows and rounds when you're going from a graph. So when you're working in rows, you would go starting from the 1 all the way across, and then you would start your next row here and then make your way back that way. But because we're working in the rounds, because I'm making a hat, we're going to start from here all the way across, and we're going to stop here, and then this is where we're going to start again, which is where my stitch marker is, and then we continue back on again. And that's just the way it is, and that's the way it goes. And as I said, I do mark my rows so I know exactly where I'm up to, so I can't get lost in the pattern. Very easy to happen to get lost in the pattern. So this can be printed, but also in my pattern you will also find written instructions if you don't like working from a graph. So in different sections of this pattern, you can actually cut a colour that you're not going to be using for X amount of rounds. So for me, for example, I started with the white, brought in the red, carried on and with the white, brought in the blue. When I got so far with the blue, I could then quite happily cut the red because we're not using it no more. So sometimes you don't need to carry all 3 colours, but then there are going to be times in the pattern where you are going to need to have all 3 of the colours, and you'll be using all 3 colours in one round or several rounds for this particular pattern. So there is a way to stop your yarns from getting tangled, because I know that is quite a nuisance for some. So as you can see here, I've got my yarns are quite separated from each other, and there's a reason for that, because I don't want them tangling. They are going to get tangled, but the tangling will be at the top rather than further down, because if the tangling is happening down here, that's where we have major problems, and that's when basically the tangling gets worse and worse. It doesn't get any easier, you just keep going with it and you get more and more tangles. So to stop that, it's best to have tangling at the top here where it's more manageable, and you'll notice that, you know, your work will just go flowly nicely. So I'm going to show you how to do that, because this round I will be introducing the red again, and I'm going to show you a couple of stitches of how to do the modified single crochet, using the back loop, how to switch, and how to keep your yarns nice and tidy as you're working. Also with tapestry, I'm just going to mention lastly the hook that I use. I am currently using DK yarn, so it's just an average DK yarn acrylic, and I am using a 3.5mm crochet hook. Now my yarn does recommend me to use a size 4, but since this is tapestry, I go down a hook size, because you will then get nice stitches that's nice and tight to lock the colours in, and it stops the colour from bleeding through. So I'm just about to begin on row 12. So to begin, I'm going to remove my stitch marker, and then you're going to hold your yarn as you normally would. So then we're going to insert the hook in the back loop only. So this is for stitch 1 of the round. So insert your hook into the back loop only. So you've got 2 loops, front loop and back loop. And you're going to hold that blue as well, that's going to sit over. But before we do anything else, I'm also going to now introduce the red. So the way to do that is grab some of your next colour for your third colour. So when you attach this on, you just want to place it over the hook and make sure it's sitting quite nicely against the top of the hat. So as you can see, I've got the white, blue, and then the red. So everything's in order. So the white yarn sits there, the blue yarn's there, and then the red yarn is here. So they've all got their own little space. So then we're going to pick up the white yarn, keeping the red and the blue over the hook before we start. And then we're going to grab this white yarn from the back, and we're going to pull that through that back loop only. So with a normal single crochet, you would normally pick up your yarn like so, and that would be over, and you'd go through. So rather than doing that, we're going to go from the back of the yarn, and we're going to make sure that we're going to go under. So rather than going this way, we take it from the back and we pull it through those 2 loops. So that's 1. Then I'm going to go into the next stitch for another white, which is a back loop again, and repeat that again. So here I just like to stop for a second and place my stitch marker back before I lose where I was up to. So that stitch marker is now back in that very first stitch. So now I've got 2 white and now need to go onto a blue. So actually, because it's 2 white then 1 blue, I don't need to fully close that second white. So here all you would do, because your next colour is blue, making sure you've got all your yarns nicely together, back loop only, pull the yarn through, and then you're going to drop the white. Well, I would like to bring the white closer to myself, and then I'll keep the red at the very back and picking up the blue. Yarn under with the blue and pull through 2 loops. Into the next stitch is going to be a white. So I'm going to pull the blue back up, drop the blue, and now I'm going to pick up the white and finish this stitch in the white. So it's 2 white, 1 blue, and then we're going to go back to white. So it's just 1 white, so making sure you get that back loop. Keeps getting caught. So yep, there's the white. So then we're going to bring that white forward, and once again we're going to go blue so that red can sit towards the back. See how they're twisting at the back? That's what you really want, rather than twisting further down. So pick up the blue and pull through those 2 loops, making sure you're taking it under, not over. And sometimes, because the hook that I'm using is smaller than the recommended size for this yarn, it does sometimes get caught quite easily. This is a slow process of tapestry. Tapestry is always going to be a slow process. So for the next stitch is going to be blue again. And once again, I'm going to drop the blue and pick up the white. Making sure I go through both of those loops and holding onto those two so the colours are always locked in at the back. So next is going to be 2 white, and after these 2 white is when I'm going to start bringing in the red. So we've got 1 and then 2, stop, going to drop my white, that can sit forward. And then this time round, because I'm going to be using the red, I've got the blue, that's up there, this red is going to sit over. But don't worry, because it's supposed to knot at the back, well not knot, but you know, twist round at the back. So pull through those 2 loops in the red. And then we're going to go into the next stitch and we're going to switch back to the white. So then you can drop the red and pick back up with the white, pull through 2, and then hold in those 2 again, making sure you catch both of those strands in the back loop and pull through. So now it is going to be 2 white. So pull through 1 and the other. And sometimes you can just give it a slight little pull just to make sure everything's staying nice together, nice and snug. So then I'll drop the white again and pick up the blue. Actually I did that wrong because the white I like to bring forward, pull that back and then pick up the blue. I mean, if you do find it gets a bit messy, you can just stop and just move your yarns around slightly. But you shouldn't really need to too much. So then that's 1 blue, and next is going to be a white again. And when you're pulling through 2 loops, just always try and make sure your hook goes quite up to make sure you get under those 2 loops. So I'm going to continue on working on this round and the other rounds, and I'll be back to show you some more. So I'm now near to the end of this round. I've just got a few more stitches to go. So as I was saying before about keeping your yarns nice and tidy at the back so they don't get all tangled further down here, it's just a case of like this blue would overlap on the white, and then sometimes, you know, the other colour might overlap on another colour, and it's just a case of keeping them in whichever direction your yarns are at to make sure that they're always consistently nice and neat to be able to work, because the last thing you want is, you know, lots of tangles. So I'm going to go into the next stitch now. So the red is pulled towards the back, but before I go on I will just gently move that so it sits with the blue, back loop again, and then making sure I'm catching those 2 strands and pulling my yarn up, bringing that one forward. This is where they overlap slightly, so what you want to do is make sure that the red is separated from the blue for a moment. So you're just going to hold the red while you're holding the white, so you kind of like pinch them together, picking up the blue, and just switch over from one hand to the other when you go to yarn under and pull through, and then you can switch hands again. So you're just constantly switching your fingertips from one side to the other. So then again, picking up the red because that needs to be that colour needs to be locked in with the white, as I do this next one. So back loop only, making sure those 2 strands are over the hook, and then yarning under. But not forgetting I don't need to actually close that stitch because the next stitch will be white. So then I would stop and then pick up my white again. Once again, as I was saying before, just to keep everything nice and neat, you just want to make sure they are going to knot down here further, so you just want to bring that up, so that's that way, and then the blue sat that way, and then the white. So then again, you just separate them, pulling that through, and then when you do your back loop, you want to bring both the strands back together, and then you would work your last colour in that last stitch. So that's how to make sure that your yarns aren't getting tangled, and where I'm up to with this beanie. So here's my hat now completed. So at this section, after you finish tapestry, you'll go on to the ribbon. So with the ribbon, it's just 1 round single crochet, and then you make the ribbon. You can just fold that up, and then that's completed. And then of course you need to make a pom-pom. So for the pom-pom, I used all 3 colours that's in the hat, and I used pom-pom maker. So I'm just going to quickly show you how to do the pom-pom for the next section. For the pom-pom, for my hat, I used the largest pom-pom maker I have. This is Clover. I'm not trying to sell you anything, by the way, I'm just letting you know what I used. So this is the Clover pom-pom maker that I used. There are other tutorials out there how to make a pom-pom just using cardboard if you don't have one of these. So it's really easy to do and very fun to make as well. So for my hat, I used 3 colours, so I'm going to use all 3 colours for this pom-pom. Obviously you don't have to do that if you wanted to just use one singular colour, or you can, you know, do whatever you wish. But for my beanie, I have gone with 3 colours. So to begin with, using these pom-pom makers, if you don't know how to use it, they are really awkward at first. I was completely confused on how I'm going to use this, so I'm going to give you a quick demonstration how to use it, and the results are amazing. So basically, as you can see here, these do actually swing open, and it does actually pull apart as well, like so. So basically, when you're going to make your pom-pom, you're going to lift up both of these side levers. So either side there's levers, so one's going to swing at the bottom and one's going to swing at the top. So I just used one at a time, so 2 at the time rather. So basically all you want to do is lift up the levers of 2 of them together, make sure they're lined nicely, and then you're going to take 3 of your strands of your yarn, or however many yarns you're going to use. For me it's 3. So what I've done is here I've made sure that my yarns are at the same length roughly. So then I'm going to place the strands over the pom-pom. As I said, make sure the pom-pom maker is lined up nicely because it does swing quite a lot. So the way to do that is just hold it at the best you can and use your thumb to secure it just there, and then begin to wrap. So once you're happy, begin to wrap, and you want to wrap it relatively tight but not too tight, but you do want to make sure when you're wrapping this that you are going right into the edging and all around. And I'm just going to keep wrapping this around, wrapping, and as you can see it is a bit of a nuisance because obviously I'm using 3 lots of yarn at the same time here, so it doesn't really matter you know how you do this, but I like to make sure it's all even so you get an even pom-pom. And so just make sure you keep wrapping, and so it's got to be even all over the whole of the maker, the arms of the maker or whatever. I'm not sure what they're actually called, but so just keep wrapping that around. And I do mine so it's fairly full because I want to have a nice poofy pom-pom, hence how poofy you want your pom-pom. So I'm just going to keep going, and and then I will do the next side. Once this is, you kind of know when it's time to stop, because here there won't be anything really left with that dip. So as I said, just keep making sure it's evenly wrapped around. And your yarns will kind of go all over the place a little bit. So I'm quite happy with that now, so I'll just keep putting a little bit more in there. And as I said, once you are happy, you can just eventually stop and close. So then you can just simply cut these strands. What I like to do is I like to cut them to the size, so I will just cut mine to the edge just here of the pom-pom. So just simply cut. I know it just leaves a little bit there, but you can always trim that a little bit later on if it's very noticeable at the end of making the pom-pom. So the next is to do the opposite side, exactly the same as what I've just done here, and then I'll be back to show you what you need to do next. Okay, so my pom-pom is now pretty much ready to go, so I'm just going to cut that there. And then we can begin to make the actual pom-pom. So now you want to make sure everything is closed and locked nicely. If you think those strands might be a little bit long, you can just give them a little trim before you begin. So all you want to do here now is, again, using your scissors. So where these two are where you open to release it, you're just going to put your scissors in between of there, and then you're going to cut. And there's like little ridges because obviously there's two of them there, so that will secure your scissors in there, so you're going to get a nice even cut. So just be careful when you do this section. So just all you want to do is just hold the pom-pom, whatever's comfortable for you, and begin to cut. So as you can see, the grooves there, that's perfect for keeping everything in nice in line. So just keep cutting to the end, and here you just want to be a little bit careful that you don't hurt yourself or anything. So next now is to do the next side, so I'm just going to trim that off as well. So to do the next side, you're going to do exactly the same. Make sure that's held in well. And then once you've finished with cutting, I like to use the same colour of the mane of my hat. So the top of my hat is actually navy blue. So I want to use a navy blue to secure this all together. So now that is almost ready to go. So what I want to do here is I don't want to do anything else with regards to cutting. So just, it is a little bit messy. So you want to get a good length of yarn because this is going to be used to secure the pom-pom and secure the pom-pom to the hat. So a nice decent length of yarn. And I'm going to go with the blue. So now we want to secure this before we take it apart. So all you're going to do is basically have the yarn going over, I don't know if you can see, so where the groove is, so the yarn's going to sit into that groove, and you want to make sure it's on nice and tight. Just give it a good pull and you'll kind of feel like a click. So you want to make sure that's secure. So now you're just going to tie it. When I tie this, I do it actually twice, so I go through the loop twice, and then you're going to close that knot all the way, but don't be careful that you don't actually snap the yarn as well. So nice and tight, but don't snap the yarn. And then you can then quite happily undo the pom-pom. So the way to undo the pom-pom is you're going to lift up these two, and don't be afraid, because it does kind of feel a bit like, oh, this is going to break, but it actually doesn't. So just do one at a time. And as I said, these can be trimmed later. It's just my scissors didn't quite cut through it enough, so they can just be trimmed. I mean, you can do all the trimming up later anyway. And then you're going to do the same again, just lifting these up. And be careful you don't trim your long tail, because you do need that. So once that's all open, you can then safely take this apart, and that is your pom-pom made. So just give it a good shake, move everything out the way, and that is the pom-pom made. And as I said, you can just go around and give it a little haircut. A little trim there, a little trim there. I don't want to trim too much because I like this style. Now if you was to completely trim it, it would look nice and smooth as well, but for this style hat, I wanted the pom-pom to have this Pacific look of like the shaggy style look. So that is how to make a pom-pom. Very easy, very fun, and as I said, these two tails, when you come to attach this to your hat, you can see at the centre of where the hat is, I just literally sewed mine from one side of the other just to make sure it was nice and secure, and then I secured it on the inside of the hat, and I've still got tails there to weave in, which I will get round to doing that soon. And that's all you need to do for your pom-pom. And that is it for this tutorial, and I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope it was useful for you. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back soon with more fun things to make. Thank you very much. Bye.